Chapter 5. The Life of Sri Chaitanya. In the latter part of the 15th century, India's most extraordinary political, cultural, and religious reformer appeared in a small town in West Bengal. 500 years before Gandhi, this remarkable personality inaugurated a massive nonviolent civil disobedience movement. He swept aside the stifling restrictions of the hereditary caste system and made it possible for people from any station in life to achieve the highest platform of spiritual enlightenment. In doing so, he broke the stranglehold of a proud intellectual elite on India's religious life. Ignoring all kinds of outmoded rituals and formulas, he introduced a revolutionary spiritual movement that was rapidly accepted all over India, a movement which, because of its universal appeal, has now spread all over the world. The name of this powerful reformer was Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the founder of the modern-day Hare Krishna movement. The Vedic scriptures of India had long predicted his birth, which occurred in 1486 in Mayapur, a quarter of the city of Navadvipa. Great saints and scholars soon detected that he was not an ordinary human being, but the supreme personality of Godhead himself, Lord Sri Krishna, appearing as a great devotee of the Lord. Sri Chaitanya had little patience with ritualistic religious functions, and he grew to young manhood. He began to carry out his divine mission. He wanted all people everywhere to have access to the actual experience of love of God, by which one can feel the highest spiritual ecstasies. This awakening, Sri Chaitanya taught, could be attained by Sankirtana, the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, the Hare Krishna mantra. Sri Chaitanya rapidly acquired many followers who immediately took up the chanting, sometimes performing it in their homes and sometimes in the streets of Navadvipa. The Lord's Sankirtana movement immediately threatened the established groups in the social hierarchy. The Muslim rulers of Bengal and the hereditary Hindu priest class, the caste priests, who were attempting to artificially monopolize religious leadership. Members of both groups lodged complaints with the local Muslim ruler, Chant. Agreeing that Sri Chaitanya and his followers threatened the established order, the Qazi tried to suppress the growing Sankirtana movement. On his order, constables raided the home of one of Sri Chaitanya's followers and smashed the drums used in the chanting. The Qazi ordered that the chanting of the holy names of the Lord be immediately stopped, and he threatened that if it began again in Navadvipa, he would ruthlessly punish those responsible. When informed of the raid, Sri Chaitanya immediately organized the largest peaceful civil disobedience movement in Indian history up to that time. On a prearranged evening, Sri Chaitanya and 100,000 of his followers suddenly appeared in the streets of Navadvipa and divided into many well-organized chanting parties. As they danced through the city, the sound of the Hare Krishna mantra resounded in a deafening roar. Finally, the chanters converged on the residence of the Qazi, who hid inside. At the Lord's invitation, however, the Qazi appeared, and the two began negotiations. Speaking politely and with great logic and reason, the Lord convinced the Qazi that the complaints against Sankirtana were groundless. In a dramatic conversion, the Qazi himself became a follower of Sri Chaitanya and actively promoted and protected the Sankirtana movement. To this very day, Hindus visit the tomb of this Muslim magistrate to pay their respects. Since the time of the Qazi, the Muslim inhabitants of Navadvipa have never interfered with the public chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, and even during the time of Hindu-Muslim riots. Not long after this important victory in his native town, Sri Chaitanya began to spread his movement all over India. For 6 years he traveled the length and breadth of the country, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and spreading love of God. At many places, crowds of hundreds of thousands of people would join with him in massive chanting parties. Nevertheless, he also encountered opponents, the strongest of whom were the Mahavajis, an elitist group of philosophers who had spread throughout India, twisting the meaning of the Vedic scriptures in a vain attempt to prove that God has no personality or form. The impersonalists also believed that spiritual enlightenment could be obtained only by a chosen few who knew Sanskrit and arduously studied the Vedanta Sutra. Throughout his travels, Sri Chaitanya struggled against the Mayavadis and succeeded in convincing many of them by the strength of his preaching. One of the greatest philosophers of the Mayavadya school, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, tried to prevail over Sri Chaitanya in philosophical discussion, but was defeated. Countering the Bhattacharya's impersonal explanation of God, Sri Chaitanya said, "The living entities are all individual persons, and they are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Whole. If the parts and parcels are individual persons, the source of their emanation must not be impersonal. He is the Supreme Person amongst all relative persons." Then out of his causeless mercy, Lord Chaitanya performed a wondrous miracle, manifesting before Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya his beautiful original spiritual form as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Falling at Lord Chaitanya's feet, the former impersonalist philosophers surrendered to him and soon became a great devotee of the Lord. But the biggest confrontation with the Mayavadis was yet to come, and it occurred in the city that had for centuries been the capital of the Mayavadya school, Benares. There Lord Chaitanya stayed with his friends and devotees and continued his Sankirtana movement, attracting crowds of thousands wherever he went. Hearing reports of this, Prakasanadana Sarasvati, the leader of the prevailing Mayavada sect, began to criticize the Lord. A real spiritual leader, he said, would never involve himself in singing and dancing with all kinds of ordinary people. Ignorant of the spiritual significance of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, he considered it mere sentiment. Prakasanada Sarasvati believed a spiritualist should continually study abstract philosophy and engage in lengthy discussions about the absolute truth. A great clash between a popular non-sectarian universal religious movement and a stifling separatist philosophy was about to occur. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would soon destroy forever the impersonalist attempted domination over Indian spiritual thought and practice. The Lord's followers were extremely unhappy about the Mayavadis' constant criticism of him, so in order to pacify them, he accepted an invitation to a meeting of all the leading Mayavadis. After seating himself on the ground at the assembly, the Lord, exhibiting his supreme mystic potency, manifested from his body a spiritual effulgence more brilliant than the sun. The Mayavadis were amazed and immediately stood in respect. Then Prakasananda Sarasvati inquired about why Sri Chaitanya chanted and danced instead of studying Vedanta philosophy. Lord Chaitanya, who in truth was extremely well versed in the Vedic teachings, replied, "I have taken to the Sankirtana movement instead of the study of Vedanta because I am a great fool." Indirectly, the Lord was criticizing the Mayavadis for being overly proud of their dry intellectual study of the Vedas, which had led them to false conclusions. "And because I am a great fool," Sri Chaitanya continued, "my spiritual master forbade me to play with Vedanta philosophy. He said that it is better that I chant the holy name of the Lord, for this would deliver me from bondage." Sri Chaitanya then spoke a Sanskrit verse his spiritual master has told him to always remember. "Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Namaiva Kevalam. Kalau naste eva, naste eva, naste eva gatir anyatha." For spiritual progress in this age of Kali, there is no alternative, no alternative, no alternative to the holy name, the holy name, the holy name of the Lord. Burnyan Narandiya Purana. The discussion went on for hours. Finally, in one of the most astounding religious conversions of all time, Prakasananda Sarasvati, the Mayavadi's greatest scholar, along with all his followers, surrendered to Lord Chaitanya and began to chant the holy names of Krishna with great enthusiasm. As a result of this conversion, the entire city of Benares adopted Sri Chaitanya's Sankirtana movement. Although Lord Chaitanya had been born a Brahmana, a member of the highest caste, he always said that such designations were simply external, and he behaved accordingly. Disregarding the social conventions of the age, he would stay in the homes of devotees from even the lowest caste and take his meals with them. Indeed, he delivered his most esoteric teachings on the subject of love of God to Ramananda Raya, a member of a lower caste. Another of the Lord's disciples, Haridasa Thakuru, was born a Muslim and thus was considered an outcast in Hindu society. Yet Sri Chaitanya elevated him to the exalted position of Namacharya, the spiritual master for chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Sri Chaitanya judged people not by their social status but by their spiritual advancement. In this way, Lord Chaitanya laid the foundation for a universal religion for all mankind, a scientific process of spiritual awakening that is now rapidly spreading around the globe. In this present age, when attendance at churches, temples, and mosques is diminishing daily, and the world is torn with violence between numerous religious and political sects, it is easy to see that people are growing more and more dissatisfied with external, divisive religious formulas. People are hungering for an experience of spirituality that transcends all boundaries. Millions are now finding that experience in the worldwide Sankirtana movement of Lord Chaitanya, who said, "This Sankirtana movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar of which we are always anxious." Chapter 6. Haridasa Thakura and the Prostitute. Strict followers of the caste system in 16th century India avoided all contact with Muslims. Yet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, founder of the modern-day Hare Krishna movement, shattered all bonds of prejudice and bigotry by elevating Haridasa Thakura, who was born in a Muslim family, to the position of Namacharya, or the spiritual master for the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. In this way, Sri Chaitanya practically demonstrated one of his central teachings. If any person is seen to be a great devotee of the Lord, he should be honored and respected regardless of his birth or social status. Such a spiritually advanced person can completely transform the lives of others. In the following incident from the life of Haridasa Thakura, we see how a beautiful prostitute became a great saint through the power of his chanting. In the forest of Benapola, in what is now known as Bangladesh, the solitary monk sat before the sacred Tulasi plant, chanting the holy names of Krishna day and night. Haridasa Thakura would chant 300,000 times of the Lord 300,000 names of the Lord each day. The body of this extraordinary saint, who was constantly in trance, was maintained by spiritual strength from chanting, and he barely slept at all. He was so influential that all the neighboring people offered their respects to him, but a landholder named Ramachandra Khan, the district tax collector, was envious of devotees of Lord Krishna. Unable to tolerate the great respect that was being offered to Haridasa Thakura, he schemed to dishonor him. By no means, however, could he find any fault in the character of Haridasa. Therefore he called for some local prostitutes and plotted to discredit the saint. Ramachandra Khan said to the prostitutes, "There is a mendicant named Haridasa Thakura. All of you devise a way to deviate him from his vows of austerity." Austerity means renunciation of sensual pleasures, especially the pleasure of sex. Ramachandra Khan selected a ravishing young beauty to break the monk's vow of celibacy and dishonor him. "I shall attract the mind of Haridasa Thakura," she promised, "within 3 days." Ramachandra Khan said to the prostitute, "My constable will go with you so that as soon as he sees you with Haridasa Thakura, he will immediately arrest him and bring both of you to me." The prostitute replied, "First let me have union with him once, then the second time I shall take your constable with me to arrest him." At night the prostitute, after dressing herself in a seductive way, went to the cottage of Haridasa Thakura. Haridasa was young, strong, and handsome, and the girl was eager to be alone with him. After offering respects to the Tulasi plant, she went to the door of Haridasa's hut, offering him obeisances, and stood there. Exposing part of her body to his view, she sat down on the threshold and spoke to him in sweet words. "My dear Haridasa, O great preacher, great devotee, you are so beautifully built, and your youth is just beginning. Who is the woman who could control her mind after seeing you? I am eager to be united with you. My mind is greedy for this. If I don't obtain you, I shall not be able to keep my body and soul together. Haridasa Thakura replied, I shall accept you without fail, but you will have to wait until I have finished chanting my regular rounds on my beads. Until that time, please sit and listen to the chanting of the holy name. As soon as I am finished, I shall fulfill your desire. Hearing this, the prostitute remained sitting there while Haridasa Thakura chanted on his beads until the light of morning appeared. When she saw that it was morning, the prostitute stood up and left. Coming before Ramachandra Khan, she informed him of all the news. Last night Haridasa Thakura promised to enjoy with me, she said. Tonight I shall certainly have union with him. That night, when the prostitute came again, Haridasa Thakura gave her many assurances. Last night you were disappointed. Please excuse my offense. I shall certainly accept you. Please sit down and hear the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra until my regular chanting is finished. Then your desire will surely be fulfilled. After offering her obeisances to the Tulasi plant and Haridasa Thakura, she again sat down at the door. Hearing Haridasa Thakura chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, she also chanted, O my Lord Hare, O my Lord Hare. When the night came to an end, the prostitute was restless. Seeing this, Haridasa said, I have vowed to chant 10 million names this month. I have taken this vow, and now it is nearing its end. I thought that today I would be able to finish my chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. I tried my best to chant the holy name all night, but it still did not finish. Tomorrow I will surely finish, and my vow will be fulfilled. Then it will be possible for me to enjoy with you in full freedom. The prostitute returned to Ramachandra Khan and informed him of what had happened. The next time she came earlier, at the beginning of the evening, and stayed all night. Again, as she began to hear Haridasa Thakura's chanting, she also chanted Hare Hare, the holy name of the Lord. Today it will be possible for me to finish my chanting, the saint said. Then I shall satisfy all your desires. The night ended with Haridasa still chanting, but now, because of her constant hearing of Haridasa's chanting, the mind of the prostitute had changed. Now fully purified, she began to cry and fell at the lotus feet of Haridasa Thakura, confessing that Ramachandra Khan had appointed her to pollute him. Because I have taken the profession of a prostitute, she said, I have performed unlimited sinful acts. My Lord, be merciful to me, deliver my fallen soul. Haridasa replied, I know everything about the conspiracy of Ramachandra Khan. He is nothing but an ignorant fool. Therefore his activities do not make me feel unhappy. On the very day Ramachandra Khan was planning his intrigue against me, I would have left this place immediately, but because you came, I stayed here for 3 days to deliver you. Kindly act as my spiritual master, she begged. Instruct me in my duty by which to get relief from material existence. Haridasa answered, Immediately go home and distribute to the brahmanas, priests, whatever property you have. Then come back to this room and stay here forever in Krishna consciousness. Chant the Hare Krishna mantra continuously and render service to the Tulasi plant by watering her and offering prayers to her. In this way you will very soon get the opportunity to be sheltered at the lotus feet of Krishna. After this, thus instructing the prostitute in the chanting of Hare Krishna, Haridasa Thakura stood up and left, continuously chanting the Lord's holy names. Following the order of her spiritual master, the prostitute distributed to the local priest whatever household possessions she had. Following Haridasa's example, she began chanting the holy name of Krishna 300,000 times a day. She chanted throughout the entire day and night, and she worshipped the Tulasi plant. By eating frugally and fasting, she conquered her senses. As soon as her senses were controlled, symptoms of love of God appeared in her person. Thus the prostitute became a great saint, and her fame spread throughout the land. Because she was very advanced in spiritual life, many devotees of the Lord would come to see her. Seeing the sublime character of this former prostitute, everyone was astonished. They glorified the influence of Haridasa Thakura and offered their obeisances to him. As for Ramachandra Khan, he was eventually ruined by the arrangement of the Lord. Meanwhile, Haridasa Thakura continued his travels, always preaching the glories of the holy name, about which he often said, "As the rising sun immediately dissipates all the world's darkness, which is deep like an ocean, so the holy name of the Lord, if chanted once without offenses, can dissipate all the reactions of a living being's sinful life. All glories to that holy name of the Lord, which is auspicious for the entire world." To this day, every year, thousands of pilgrims visit the Samadhi tomb of Haridasa Thakura, who, although born a Muslim, became the spiritual master for the chanting of the holy name, and one of India's greatest devotee saints. Chapter 7. The Science of Mantra Meditation. Excerpts from the writings of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Reviving our original brilliance. Sparks are beautiful as long as they are in the fire. Similarly, we have to remain in the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and always engage in devotional service, for then we shall always be brilliant and illuminating. As soon as we fall from the service of the Lord, our brilliance and illumination will immediately be extinguished, or at least stopped for some time. When we living entities who are like sparks of the original fire, the Supreme Lord, fall into a material condition, we must take the mantra from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as it is offered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. By chanting this Hare Krishna mantra, we shall be delivered from all the difficulties of this material world. Srimad Bhagavatam 8:6-15. The mantra for everyone. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, as a great means of propaganda by spreading love of God. It is not that it is recommended only for Kali Yuga. Actually, it is recommended for every age. There have always been many devotees who have chanted and reached perfection in all ages. That is the beauty of this Krishna consciousness movement. It is not simply for one age, or for one country, or for one class of people. Hare Krishna can be chanted by anyone in any social position, in any country, and in any age. For Krishna is the supreme Lord of all people, in all social positions, in all countries, in all ages. Elevation to Krishna Consciousness, page 91. Awakening our original consciousness. It is said in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, that love naturally awakens. Since Krishna consciousness is inherent in every living entity, everyone should be given a chance to hear about Krishna. Simply by hearing and chanting Sravanam Kirtanam, one's heart is directly purified and one's original Krishna consciousness is immediately awakened. Krishna consciousness is not artificially imposed upon the heart. It is already there. When one chants the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the heart is cleansed of all material contamination. The Nectar of Instruction, text 4, page 41. Chanting the universal religion. In this present age, quarrels take place even over trifles, and therefore the Shastras, scriptures, have recommended for this age a common platform for realization, namely chanting the holy names of the Lord. People can hold meetings to glorify the Lord in their respective languages and with melodious songs, and in such performances are executed And if such performances are executed in an offenseless manner, it is certain that the participants will gradually attain spiritual perfection without having to undergo more rigorous methods. All people of the world will accept the holy name of the Lord as the common platform for the universal religion of mankind. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1 Intro. Seeing God through sound. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare is a sound, sabda, that is non-different from Krishna. The sound Krishna and the original Krishna are the same. There are things which we hear but do not see. The wind may be whistling past our ears and we can hear it, but there is no possibility of seeing the wind. Since hearing is no less an important experience or valid one than seeing, we can hear Krishna and realize his presence through sound. Sri Krishna himself says, I am not there in my abode or in the heart of the meditating yogi, but where my pure devotees are singing. We can feel the presence of Krishna as we actually make progress. Rajavidya, the King of Knowledge, pages 16 and 17. The holy name acts like fire. Fire will act regardless of whether handled by an innocent child or someone well aware of its power. For example, if a field of straw or dry grass is set afire, either by an elderly man who knows the power of the fire or by a child who does not, the grass will be burned to ashes. Similarly, one may or may not know the power of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, but if one chants the holy name, he will become free from all sinful reactions. Srimad Bhagavatam 6.2.18. Liberation from false ego. The effect of chanting the holy name of the Lord is perceived by the chanter as liberation from the conception of false egoism. False egoism is exhibited by thinking oneself to be the enjoyer of the world and thinking everything in the world to be meant for the enjoyment of oneself only. The whole materialistic world is moving under such false egoism of I and mine, but the factual effect of chanting the holy name is to become free from such misconceptions. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.1.11. Chanting defeats death. By the grace of the Lord, if a devotee at the time of death can simply chant his holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Simply by chanting this Maha Mantra, he immediately surpasses the great ocean of the material sky and enters the spiritual sky. He never has to come back for repetition of birth and death. Simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one can surpass the ocean of death. Srimad Bhagavatam 4.10.30. Experiencing ecstasy. The transcendental ecstatic attachment for Krishna, which results from perfectly understanding that Krishna's person and name are identical, is called bhava, ecstatic spiritual emotion. One who has attained bhava is certainly not contaminated by material nature. He actually enjoys transcendental pleasure from bhava, and when bhava is intensified, it is called love of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya taught that the holy name of Krishna, called the Maha Mantra, the great chanting, enables anyone who chants it to attain the stage of love of Godhead or intensified bhava. Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, page 207. The sound incarnation of God. Sometimes Krishna descends personally, and sometimes he descends as sound vibration, and sometimes he descends as a devotee. There are many different categories of avatars, incarnations. In this present age, Krishna has descended in his holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also confirmed that in the age of Kali, Krishna has descended in the form of sound vibration. Sound is one of the forms which the Lord takes. Therefore, it is stated that there is no difference between Krishna and his name. Elevation to Krishna Consciousness, page 90. Christ or Krishna, the name is the same, from a conversation with a Benedictine monk. Christos is the Greek version of the word Krishna. When an Indian person calls on Krishna, he often says Krista. Krista is a Sanskrit word meaning attraction. So when we address God as Christ, Krista, or Krishna, we indicate the same all-attractive, supreme personality of Godhead. When Jesus said, Our Father who art in heaven, sanctified be thy name, that name of God was Krista or Krishna. Actually, it doesn't matter, Krishna or Christ, the name is the same. The main point is to follow the injunctions of the Vedic scriptures that recommend chanting the name of God in this age. I have not come to teach you, but only to request you to please chant the name of God. The Bible also demands this of you. So let us kindly cooperate and chant, and if you have a prejudice against chanting the name Krishna, then chant Christos or Krista, which there is no difference. Sri Chaitanya said, Nam Nam Akari Bahuda Nija Sarva Sakti. God has millions and millions of names, and because there is no difference between God's name and God himself, each one of these names has the same potency as God. Therefore, even if you accept designations like Hindu, Christian, or Muslim, if you simply chant the name of God found in your own scriptures, you will attain the spiritual platform. We always have these beads, just as you have your rosary. You are chanting, but why don't the other Christians also chant? If you would like to cooperate with us, then go to the churches and chant Christ, Krista, or Krishna. What would be the objection? The Science of Self-Realization, pages 106 to 112. The wild horses of the mind. The mind is always concocting objections for happiness. I am always thinking this will make me happy or that will make me happy. Happiness is here, happiness is there. In this way, the mind is taking us anywhere and everywhere. It is as though we are riding on a chariot behind an unbridled horse. We have no power over where we are going, but can only sit in horror and watch helplessly. As soon as the mind is engaged in the Krishna consciousness process, specifically chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, then the wild horses of the mind will gradually come under our control. On the Way to Krishna, pages 13 and 14. The Peace Formula. The earth is the property of God, but we, the living entities, especially the so-called civilized human beings, are claiming God's property as our own, under both an individual and collective false conception. If you want peace, you have to remove this false conception from your mind and from the world. This false claim of proprietorship by the human race on earth is partly or wholly the cause of all disturbances of peace on earth. Foolish and so-called civilized men are claiming proprietary rights on the property of God because they have now become godless. You cannot be happy and peaceful in a godless society. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that he is the factual enjoyer of all activities of the living entities, that he is the supreme Lord of all universes, and that he is the well-wishing friend of all beings. When the people of the world know this as the formula for peace, it is then and there that peace will prevail. Therefore, if you want peace at all, you will have to change your consciousness into Krishna consciousness, both individually and collectively, by the simple process of chanting the holy name of God. This is a standard and recognized process for achieving peace in the world. We therefore recommend that everyone become Krishna conscious by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is practical, simple, and sublime. 480 years ago, this formula was introduced in India by Lord Sri Chaitanya, and now it is available in your country. Take to this simple process of chanting as above mentioned. Realize your factual position by reading the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and re-establish your lost relationship with Krishna God. Peace and prosperity will be the immediately worldwide result. The Science of Self-Realization, pages 183 to 84. Free versus high-priced mantra. Recently, an Indian yogi came to America to give some private mantra, but if a mantra has any power, why should it be private? If a mantra is powerful, why should it not be publicly declared so that everyone can take advantage of it? We are saying that this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra can save everyone, and we are therefore distributing it publicly, free of charge. The devotees are preaching about charge, declaring in the streets, parks, and everywhere, Here's the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, come on, take it. The Path of Perfection, page 72. Prescription for a Crime-Free Society, from a conversation with a community relations officer with the Chicago Police Department. Lieutenant Mosey, would there be more of a beneficial influence, more of a strengthening of the community, if the program, congregational chanting, were held in a poorer area rather than an affluent area? Srila Prabhupada, our treatment is for the spiritually diseased person. When a person is afflicted with a disease, there are no distinctions between a poor man and a rich man. They are both admitted to the same hospital, just as the hospital should be in a place where both the poor man and the rich man can easily come. The location of the Sankirtana facility should be easily accessible to all. Since everyone is materially infected, everyone should be able to take advantage. So our chanting process is for everyone because it cleanses the heart regardless of the man's opulence or poverty. The only way to permanently change the criminal habit is to change the heart of the criminal. As you well know, many thieves are arrested numerous times and put into jail. Although they know that if they commit theft they will go to jail, still they are forced to steal because of their unclean hearts. Therefore, without cleansing the heart of the criminal, you cannot stop crime simply by more stringent law enforcement. The thief and the murderer already know the law, yet they still commit violent crimes due to their unclean hearts. So our process is to cleanse the heart. Then all the troubles of this material world will be solved. The Science of Self-Realization, page 162. Chapter 8. The Benefits of Chanting. Dr. Daniel Coleman, Associate Editor of Psychology Today and author of Variety's Meditative Experience, after studying the meditation techniques of members of the Krishna consciousness movement, said, I found the Hare Krishna devotees to be well-integrated, friendly, and productive human beings. In a culture like ours, in which inner spiritual development is almost totally neglected in favor of materialistic pursuits, we might have something to learn from their meditational practices. Everyone knows that a happy life requires good health. Proper diet, adequate exercise, and sufficient rest are necessary to keep our bodies strong and fit. If we neglect these demands, our bodies become weakened and resistance wanes. Highly susceptible to infection, we eventually become ill. More important, but less well known, is the inner self's need for spiritual nourishment and attention. If we ignore our spiritual health requirements, we become overwhelmed by negative material tendencies like anxiety, hatred, loneliness, prejudice, greed, boredom, envy, and anger. In order to counteract and prevent these subtle infections of the self, we should, as recommended in the Vedic literatures, incorporate into our lives a program of self-examination and steady inner growth based on spiritual strength and clarity of thought. The transcendental potency necessary for developing complete psychological and spiritual fulfillment is already present within everyone. It must, however, be uncovered by a genuine spiritual process. Of all such authentic processes, India's timeless Vedas tell us that meditation on the Hare Krishna mantra is the most powerful. The initial result of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra is summarized by Srila Prabhupada in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. We have practical experiences that any person who is chanting the holy names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in course of time feels some transcendental pleasure and very quickly becomes purified of all material contamination. In the preliminary stages of chanting, the practitioner experiences a clearing of consciousness, peace of mind, and relief from unwanted drives and habits. As one develops more realization by chanting, he perceives the original spiritual existence of the self. According to the Bhagavad Gita, this enlightened state is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, a multi-volume work describing the life and teachings of Sri Chaitanya, founder of the modern-day Krishna consciousness movement, the ultimate benefit of chanting is described. The result of chanting is that one awakens his love for Krishna and tastes transcendental bliss. Ultimately, one attains the association of Krishna and engages in his devotional service, as if immersing himself in a great ocean of love. So by chanting Hare Krishna, one reaps innumerable benefits, culminating in Krishna consciousness and love of God. We can realize the fruits of chanting by adopting the process of mantra meditation and applying it systematically. For clear understanding of the progressive effects of chanting, some of the more important benefits are discussed separately. Peace of mind. Initially, meditation focuses on controlling the mind, for in our normal condition we are slaves to any whimsical thoughts, desires, and appetites the mind may generate. We think of something and immediately we want to do it. But the Bhagavad Gita tells us that the meditator must learn to control the mind. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends, but for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. The materialistic mind attempts to enjoy by employing the senses to experience matter and material relationships. It is full of unlimited ideas for sense gratification, and being perpetually restless, it constantly flickers from one sense object to another. In doing so, the mind vacillates between hankering for some material gain and lamenting some loss or frustration. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains, one who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither a controlled mind nor steady intelligence, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? By chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, we can control the mind instead of letting it control us. Mantra is a Sanskrit word. Man means mine, and tra means to deliver. Thus a mantra is a transcendental sound vibration with the potency to liberate the mind from material conditioning. In his commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada explains, our entanglement in material affairs has begun from material sound. Each day we hear material sounds from the radio and television, from friends and relatives, and based on what we hear, we act. But as Srila Prabhupada points out, there is sound in the spiritual world also. If we approach that sound, then our spiritual life begins. When we control the mind by focusing it on the purely spiritual sound vibration of the Hare Krishna mantra, the mind becomes calm. As music has charms to soothe the savage beast, so the spiritual sound of the mantra soothes the restless mind. The Hare Krishna mantra, being imbued with God's own supreme energies, has the power to subdue all kinds of mental disturbance. Just as a reservoir of water is transparent when agitated, our mental perceptions become clear and pure when the mind is no longer agitated by the waves of material desires. The mind in its pure state, like a mirror cleansed of dust, will then reflect undistorted images of reality, allowing us to go beneath the surface and perceive the essential spiritual quality of all life's experiences. Knowledge of the self. The Vedas state that consciousness is a symptom of the soul. It is pure condition. The soul exists in the spiritual world, but when it falls down into contact with matter, the living beings is covered by an illusion called false egoism. False ego bewilders the consciousness, causing us to identify with our material bodies. But we are not our material body. When we look at our hand or leg, we say, "This is my hand," or "This is my leg." The conscious self, the I, is therefore the owner and observer of the body. Intellectually, the fact is easily understandable, and by the spiritual realization that results from chanting, this truth can be directly and continuously experienced. When the living being identifies with the material body and loses awareness of his real spiritual self, he inevitably fears death, old age, and disease. He fears loss of beauty, intelligence, and strength, and experiences countless other anxieties and false emotions relating to the temporary body. But when we begin regularly chanting Hare Krishna, we soon realize ourselves to be pure and changeless spirit souls, completely distinct from the material body. Because the mantra is a completely pure spiritual sound vibration, it has the power to restore our consciousness to its original, uncontaminated condition. At this point, we cease to be controlled by jealousy, bigotry, pride, envy, and hatred. As Lord Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad Gita, the soul is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, and primeval. As our false bodily identification dissolves and we perceive our true transcendental existence, we automatically transcend all the fears and anxieties of material existence. We no longer think, I am an American, I am Russian, I am black, I am white. Attaining real self-awareness also gives us the ability to see the spiritual nature of all living beings. When our natural spiritual feelings are awakened, we experience the ultimate unity of all life. This is what it means to become a liberated person. By spiritual realization, we become free of all animosity and envy toward other living things. This higher vision is explained by Srila Prabhupada in Transcendental Teachings of Prahlada Maharaja. When a person becomes fully Krishna conscious, he does not think, here is a man, here is an animal, here is a cat, here is a dog, here is a worm. He sees everyone as part and parcel of Krishna. This is very nicely explained in the Bhagavad Gita. One who is actually learned in Krishna consciousness becomes a lover of everyone in the universe. Unless one is situated on the Krishna conscious platform, there is no question of universal brotherhood. Real happiness. Everyone is thirsting for true and lasting happiness, but because material pleasure is limited and temporary, it is compared to a tiny drop of moisture in the desert. It gives us no permanent relief because material sensations and relationships lack the potency to satisfy the spiritual desires of the soul. But the chanting of Hare Krishna provides complete satisfaction because it places us in direct contact with God and His spiritual pleasure potency. God is full of all bliss, and when we enter His association, we can also experience the same transcendental happiness. In the Vedic literature, there is an interesting account of how the pleasure of chanting far exceeds any material benefit. Once a poor Brahmana priest worshipped the demigod Lord Shiva for a material benediction. Lord Shiva, however, advised him to go to the sage Sanatana Goswami to obtain his heart's desire. Upon learning that Sanatana Goswami had a mystical stone capable of producing gold, the poor Brahmana asked if he could have it. Sanatana consented and told the Brahmana he could take the stone from its resting place in his garbage pile. The Brahmana departed in great joy, for he could now get as much gold as he desired simply by touching the stone to iron. But afterward he thought, if a touchstone is the best benediction, why did Sanatana Goswami keep it with the garbage? He returned to Sanatana Goswami to satisfy his curiosity. The sage then informed him, actually, this is not the best benediction, but are you prepared to take the best benediction from me? Yes, the poor Brahmana replied, I have come to you for the best benediction. Sanatana Goswami then told him to to throw the touchstone into the water nearby, and then return. The poor Brahmana did so, and when he came back, the saintly Sanatana initiated him into the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, the sublime method for experiencing the highest spiritual pleasure. Liberation from karma. The law of karma means that for every material action performed, nature forms an equivalent reaction upon the performer, or as the Bible states, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Material activities can be compared to seeds. Initially they are performed or planted, and over the course of time they gradually fructify, releasing their resultant reactions. Enmeshed in this web of actions and reactions, we are forced to accept one material body after another to experience our karmic destiny. But freedom from karma is possible by sincere chanting of Krishna's transcendental names. Since God's names are filled with transcendental energy, when the living being associates with the divine sound vibration, he is freed from the endless cycle of karma. Just as seeds fried in a pan lose their potency to sprout, so karmic reactions are rendered impotent by the power of the holy names of God. Krishna is like the sun. The sun is so powerful that it can purify whatever comes into contact with it. If any object enters the sun globe, it is immediately transformed into fire. Similarly, when our consciousness is absorbed in the transcendental sound of Krishna, his internal energies act to purify us of all karmic reactions. In his commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada stresses, the holy name is so spiritually potent that simply by chanting the holy name one can be freed from the reactions to all sinful activity. Freedom from reincarnation. The Vedas teach that the living entity, the soul, is eternal, but that due to past activities and material desires, it perpetually accepts different material bodies. As long as we have material desires, nature, acting under God's direction, will award us some material body after another. This is called transmigration of the soul, or reincarnation. Actually, this changing of bodies is not surprising, because even in the life we go through many bodies. First we have the body of an infant, then a child, later an adult, and finally the form of an old man or woman. Similarly, after the death of our old body, we get a new one. Liberation from this cycle, known as samsara, or the endless wheel of birth and death, is possible by freeing our consciousness from material desires. By chanting Hare Krishna, we revive the natural spiritual desires of the soul. Just as the nature of the body is to be attracted to sense gratification, the nature of the soul is to be attracted to God. Chanting awakens our original God consciousness and our desire to serve and associate with Him. By this simple change in consciousness, we can transcend this cycle of reincarnation. Srila Prabhupada discusses this in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. One's thoughts during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thoughts at the moment of death. So this life creates one's next life. If in this life one is transcendentally absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental, spiritual, not material. Therefore the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the best process for successfully changing one's state of being at the end of one's life. The ultimate benefit, love of God. The final goal and the highest fruit of chanting is complete God realization and pure love of God. As our consciousness becomes increasingly purified, our steady spiritual advancement is reflected in our character and behavior. As the sun approaches the horizon in the morning, the sunrise is preceded by increasing warmth and illumination. Similarly, as realization of Krishna's holy name is revived within the heart, this increasing spiritual awareness manifests in all aspects of our personality. Ultimately, the eternal, loving relationship between God and the living being is revived. Before entering the material world, each soul had a unique spiritual relationship with God. Thus, loving relationship is thousands of times greater and more intense than any love experienced in the material world. This is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the heart of the living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, this love naturally awakens. In our eternal constitutional position in the spiritual world, we are able to associate with God directly, serving Him in a spiritual form just suitable for our mood of love and devotion. In this relationship of spiritual love, the pure devotee is absorbed in transcendental ecstasy. This state of ecstasy is described in the nectar of devotion. At that time, one's heart becomes illuminated like the sun. The sun is far above the planetary systems, and there is no possibility of its being covered by any kind of cloud. Similarly, when a devotee is purified like the sun, from his heart there is a diffusion of ecstatic love more glorious than the sunshine. Chapter 9. Techniques for Chanting. The meditation business is flourishing these days. Modern-day messiahs, gurus, and incarnations with all varieties of mantras are a dime a dozen as eager customers flock to the feet of self-styled saviors. One so-called guru instructs his disciples in supercharged techniques for becoming a financial success. Another tells his followers that meditation will make their intelligence sharper and the body more fit to enjoy sensual pleasures. Still other gurus claim that sex is the ultimate goal of life and that unlimited sex will free one from all material desires. Some chic spiritual seekers pay a lot of money for secret mantras that they believe will allow them to perform mystic feats, but the Vedic literatures issue stern warnings about charlatan gurus and bogus mantras. If a person is actually serious about spiritual life, he or she must come in contact with a bona fide spiritual master and learn from him the science of Krishna consciousness. The Mundaka Upanishad states that in order to learn the transcendental science, one must approach the bona fide spiritual master in disciplic succession who is fixed in the absolute truth. Not just any guru will do. This verse informs us that the spiritual master must be in disciplic succession from Lord Krishna, the supreme spiritual master. Such a genuine spiritual master receives Krishna's teachings through the disciplic chain and distributes them exactly as he has heard them from his spiritual master, without watering them down or altering them to suit his whims. A bona fide guru is not an impersonalist or voidist. He will never claim to be God, rather, he aspires to be a servant of God and his devotees. Such a guru is called an acharya, or one who teaches by example. His life is free from all material desires and sinful behavior. His character is exemplary, and he must be qualified to deliver his disciples from the path of repeated birth and death. The Krishna-conscious guru is absorbed in service to and meditation on the Supreme Lord at every moment. Since the holy name of Krishna is completely spiritual, it must be received from a pure representative or servant of Krishna who acts as a transparent medium between God and the sincere spiritual seeker. Mantras received from any other type of guru simply will not work. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada writes in his commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, unless one follows the disciplic succession, the mantra one receives will be chanted for no purpose. Nowadays there are so many rascal gurus who manufacture their mantras as a process for material advancement, not for spiritual advancement. Still, the mantra cannot be successful if it is manufactured. Mantras in the process of devotional service have special power, provided they are received from the authorized person. Receiving the Hare Krishna mantra from a bona fide guru who is in complete harmony with Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad Gita is the single most important aspect of chanting Hare Krishna. Chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is the simplest of all processes of self-realization. There are no exorbitant fees, the mantra is free, the thriving business of selling mantras is a form of cheating. The test of a person's sincerity is not that he pays some money, but that he is willing to change his life. In order to chant Hare Krishna, one need not equip oneself with expensive props and paraphernalia, learn to stand on one's head, or perform other difficult postures or breathing exercises. The only equipment one sees is a tongue and ear. The only equipment one needs is a tongue and ears. Everyone already has these. The tongue simply has to vibrate Krishna's holy names, and the ears must hear it. By this simple process alone, one can achieve all perfection. There are no hard and fast rules for chanting Hare Krishna. The most wonderful thing about mantra meditation is that only one may chant anywhere at home, anyone may chant at home, at work, driving in the car, or riding on the bus or subway, and one may chant at any time. How to chant. There are no hard and fast rules for chanting Hare Krishna. The most wonderful thing about mantra meditation is that one may chant anywhere, at home, at work, driving in the car, or riding on the bus or subway, and one may chant at any time. There are two basic types of chanting. Personal meditation, where one chants alone on beads, is called japa. When one chants in responsive fashion with others, this is called kirtana. Kirtana is usually accompanied by musical instruments and clapping. Both forms of chanting are recommended and beneficial. To perform the first type of meditation, one needs only a set of japa beads. These may be purchased from any Hare Krishna temple or by contacting the BBT mail order department. Or if you like, you can make your own beads at home. If you decide to make your japa beads, follow these simple instructions. Buy 109 large round beads, at least as big as a dime, and some strong, thick nylon thread. Tie a knot around 6 inches from the end of a long piece of the thread, and then string the beads, tying a knot after each one. After stringing 108 beads, put the two ends of the thread through one large master bead. This bead is called the Krishna bead. Tie a knot next to it and cut off the excess thread. You now have your own set of japa beads. To meditate with the beads, hold them in your right hand. Gently roll the first bead between your thumb and middle finger. See illustration on page 110 as you chant the complete Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Then go to the next bead, rolling it between the same two fingers, while again chanting the entire mantra. Then go on to the next bead, and then to the next, continuing in this way until you have chanted on all 108 beads and have come to the Krishna bead. You have now completed one round of chanting. Do not chant on the Krishna bead, but turn the beads around and chant on them in the opposite direction. One after another, chanting on beads is especially helpful, for it engages the sense of touch in the meditative process and helps you concentrate even more on the sound of the mantra. You may want to chant japa indoors, but you can chant just as comfortably walking along the beach or hiking in the mountains. Just bring your beads along with you. If you chant sitting down, you should assume a comfortable position, preferably not lying down or slouching, for there's always the tendency to fall asleep. You can chant as loudly or as softly as you like, but it's important to pronounce the mantra clearly and loudly enough to hear yourself. The mind may have a tendency to wander off to other matters when you chant, for the mind is flickering and unsteady, always looking for something new and pleasurable to absorb itself in. If your mind wanders to anything except Krishna and things related to him, gently bring it back to the transcendental sound vibration. It won't be difficult because the mind is easily satisfied when absorbed in the divine sound of the Lord's holy names. Unlike other meditational practices where one may be asked to fix his mind on nothing or the void. One may chant japa at any time, but the Vedic literatures note that certain hours of the day are most auspicious for performing spiritual activities. The early morning hours just before and after sunrise are generally a time of stillness and quietude, excellently suited to contemplative chanting. Many people find it especially helpful to set aside a certain amount of time at the same time each day for chanting. Start with 1 or 2 rounds a day and gradually increase the number until you reach 16, the recommended minimum for serious chanters. When japa is a form of meditation involving you, your beads, and the Supreme Lord, kirtana is a form of group meditation in which one sings the mantra, sometimes accompanied by musical instruments. You may have seen a kirtana party chanting on the streets of your city, for the devotees frequently perform this type of chanting to demonstrate the process and allow as many people as possible to benefit from hearing the holy names. One may hold a kirtana at home with family or friends, with one person leading the chanting and the others responding. Kirtana is more of a supercharged meditational process, where in addition to hearing oneself chant, one also benefits by hearing the chanting of others. Musical instruments are nice, but not necessary. One may sing the mantra to any melody and clap his hands. Especially recommended are the traditional melodies, like those found on the CDs offered by BBT Mailholder. If you have children, you can sing along as well and make spiritual advancement. You can get the whole family together every evening for chanting. The sounds of the material world are boring, hackneyed, and monotonous, but chanting is an ever-increasingly refreshing experience. Make a test yourself. Try chanting some word or phrase for even 5 minutes. If you chant Coca-Cola over and over again, even for a few minutes, it becomes practically unbearable. There's no pleasure in it, but the sound of Krishna's names is transcendental, and as one chants, he wants to chant more and more. Enhancing your chanting. Although one receives immense benefit, however, and whenever one may chant Hare Krishna, the great spiritual masters who are authorities on chanting suggest that the practitioner employ certain practical techniques that will enhance the chanting and bring quicker results as well. The more one chants, the more easily he will be able to follow the principles listed below, for as one chants he gains spiritual strength and develops a higher taste. When one begins to relish spiritual pleasure from chanting, giving up bad habits that may hinder one's spiritual progress becomes much easier. Just by chanting Hare Krishna, one will automatically want to follow the 4 regulative principles of spiritual life. A. No eating of meat, fish, or eggs. B. No intoxication. C. No gambling. D. No illicit sex, sex outside of marriage, or not meant for the procreation of God-conscious children. The 4 above-mentioned activities make it especially difficult for one to progress in spiritual life because they increase one's attachment to material things. Therefore, they are not recommended for one who has taken up the chanting of Hare Krishna. The chanting is so powerful, however, that one may begin chanting at any stage, and the chanting will help one make the necessary adjustments. 2. One should regularly read the Vedic literatures, especially the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. If one simply hears about God, his uncommon qualities and transcendental pastimes, the dust accumulated in the heart due to long association with the material world will be cleansed. By regularly hearing about Krishna and the spiritual world, where Krishna enjoys eternal pastimes with his devotees, one will fully understand the nature of the soul, true spiritual activities, and the complete procedure for obtaining release from the material world. To be more fully immunized against material contamination, one should eat only vegetarian foods that have been spiritualized by being offered to the Supreme Lord. There is a karmic reaction involved when one takes the life of any living being, including plants, but the Supreme Lord states in the Gita that if one offers him vegetarian foods, he will nullify that reaction. 4. One should offer the fruit of one's work to the Supreme Lord. When one works for his own pleasure or satisfaction, he must accept the karmic reactions to his activities. But if one dedicates his work to God and works only for his satisfaction, there is no karmic reaction. Work performed as service to the Lord not only frees one from karma, but awakens one's dormant love for Krishna. As much as possible, one who is serious about chanting Hare Krishna should associate with like-minded persons. This gives one great spiritual strength. Srila Prabhupada formed the International Society for Krishna Consciousness so that persons who are sincere about becoming conscious of God and reviving their eternal loving relationship with Him may benefit from associating with others who are also on the path back home to the spiritual world. Eventually, serious chanters will want to take initiation from a bona fide spiritual master. Initiation is recommended in the Vedic scriptures, for it dramatically helps one in chanting Hare Krishna and assists in the awakening of our original spiritual consciousness. There are qualified spiritual masters in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness throughout the world who are willing to assist anyone sincere about becoming God consciousness. Srila Prabhupada has indicated that those who desire to take initiation must follow the regulative principles mentioned earlier and chant each day on beads a minimum of 16 rounds. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the incarnation of Krishna, who popularized the chanting of the holy names 500 years ago in India, introduced the system of chanting a fixed number of rounds each day. Careful completion of 16 rounds daily will help the disciple remember Krishna always. That, in essence, is what Krishna consciousness is all about, always remembering Krishna and never forgetting him. And chanting is the simplest way of maintaining this constant state of God consciousness, for the mystical potency contained in the mantra's vibration will always keep you in touch with God and your own original spiritual nature. All of God's innumerable spiritual potencies, including his transcendental pleasure principle, are contained in his holy names. Therefore, the pleasure you will feel as you begin to chant will be far, far greater than any material happiness you have ever experienced. And the more you chant Hare Krishna, the happier you will feel.